Yes, I guess it's already 4 o'clock.
Well,
No,
there's
it's
some.
already 7 o'clock. I'm looking at my time.
Just to let Stephen knows, we're doing this
Every week?
well, Saturday morning here in California. Actually, it's Saturday night over there in the Philippines.
Yeah.
For the GC, isn't it? So our what we've been doing is actually we study most of the Allan Kardec books, or sometimes different topic. Like right now we have a certain readings that what we do. But since you are here also, we discussed that we may give you a certain times to talk about mediumship, since that is your expertise.
Okay.
And Brad Jude can kind of guide us with that. And we have actually a lot of people here that they may not be in the video, but because some of their connection in the Philippines, it depends where they are.
Yeah, no, yeah, I understand completely. So they're just like watching in on it and listening.
Yes. Like Brother JC, I think he's attending an anniversary right now. Let me see what. There's a chat over there that you can check. And so, do you want me to read now? This one, Brother Juno.
Yeah, just to start off our program. So, like what Brother Abner said, Brother Stephen, we open with the reading, and then somebody will share his or her thought, whoever was assigned the reader for the day. And then after that, we proceed with the opening prayer. And then we proceed with where we left off the previous week regarding our discussion on the Gospel according to Spiritism. So we are tackling the Gospel according to Spiritism right now. And excuse my voice, I'm a little off or under the weather. But anyway, so after Brother Abner has made a reading and the opening prayer, like what he said, you could probably discuss about mediumship, your experience about mediumship, what is mediumship, because as you are aware, when you were in the Philippines, you've been in the Philippines, right? Several
I've been in
times.
the Philippines quite a few times, yeah.
Yeah, and you've attended our sessions as well.
Yes.
And you've seen the mediumistic practices held in our centers. So the practices might be different, but it would be enlightening for us to share to us how mediumship practices are done there in New Zealand and here in the United States.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Brother Abner, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Invisible things. Let me see if I can get a little bit closer. For since the creation of the world, oh, there you go. Thank you. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. This is in Paul Romans 1 to 20. The spectacle of creation of the universe is the most outstanding of all manifestation against negative materialism, son of ignorance of foolishness. The created objects more just lastly address the invisible nature. Where could you find activity that unfolds without reason? Every intelligent form was born of an intelligent source. Mankind only knows the causes of his transitory achievements, ignoring all the complex motives of each angle in the road. The exterior landscape that affects the senses is a minuscule part of the divine creation that sustains his habitat. Condition let me see. Lost a little bit. Just hold on. Conditioned to his possibilities of benefitings, the human eyes will not perceive further than the limits of their capacity of resistance. The human beings will live among the beings that he requires in his task evolvement. He will have the adequate environment required for his needs of improvements and progress. But let no one presume that the vital experience of the sphere in which he breathes is that his mortal fingers are capable of touching. The visible objects in the area of illusionary forms are brief and transitory, resulting from the invisible forces of the eternal plane. Fulfill the obligation that corresponds to you, and you will receive the proper rights that await you. Fulfill your daily obligations correctly, and you will be required to repeat the same experience tomorrow. Is that it?
Yeah. So any thoughts on this reading for today, Brother Abner?
Let me see if you could also give your thought on these, Stephen, as well. Let me see if well, basically, from what I get here is, God created everything that we could see and also we cannot see. But basically, he gave us these because he is the source of all intelligence. He is the source of everything. But he gave us these uh, environment that we can make progress or we can excel to what he created. So basically, we here and everything that God had given us, we have the capacity to make progress. That's what basically what I got.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brother Abner. Can you do the proceed with the opening prayer?
Okay. Well, Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity that you have given us again to go together. And it is through your grace and love. Please guide us so that we can have an open mind and an open heart, so that we can continue learning from one another. It's so nice to have all our brothers, especially we have Stephen here, where we haven't seen for a long, long time. So thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Good evening and good morning, everyone. Again, welcome to our weekly discussion about the principles of Spiritism. And we have a special guest for tonight, Brother Stephen Hermann. He's originally from New Zealand, right?
I'm actually I'm from the States. I'm originally from
he's from the US.
Massachusetts,
I'm sorry.
and I have lived in New Zealand, which is why you're saying New Zealand, but I'm back living in Massachusetts.
I see. So Stephen is a medium, and he has written books about mediumship as well. He's a lecturer also about mediumship, and one of his books is The Mastery of Mediumship, correct? And it's, if you have the opportunity to get a hold of this book, very nice book about mediumship. So let's take advantage of his presence right now so that he can discuss about mediumship, give us more understanding about what is mediumship, what are mediums, and maybe some information about the mechanism of mediumship and the purpose of mediumship. And if he could probably give us a comparative view about how mediumship is practiced in the United States as differentiated from the practices in the Philippines. Okay, Stephen, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. See, Abner, like, he twisted my arm, but really it's the spirits that did it. And it's kind of neat because I know Raymond, I know JC. I mean, some of the names I recognize. So I think some of you have met before. I've been to the Philippines quite a few times, and most of the times to do work. So I've been to the General Assembly in Capas at least 3 times, and I've been to a lot of different centers all over the place. And it's all because of Abner's brother, who invited me originally. So
I'm
sorry. Sorry, Stephen, but
it's like the spirit voices are speaking. So
if you have some materials to share, it's already in the multiple sharing. You can use it.
Oh, Sor was saying if you have some, while you're discussing, if you have some materials.
If you have something to share with us, you want to use
no, I don't have
the
any. Yeah,
screen.
I'm not. I
Yeah.
can just talk. I'm not sure how to use
it's
all that
okay.
stuff with
Because
my
I give
laptop.
I give you permission already. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm really happy to be here, though. But so, Spiritism or spiritualism, where did it start out? It started out actually it's always been around. If we go back, there's biblical spiritualism, right? The communication between the spirit world and the physical world. So someone who is a prophet or practices prophecy, and we have so many different examples of this in the New Testament and the Old Testament. Well, they were a medium. They're an intermediary between the physical world and the spirit dimension, which is all around us. So if we go back into the 19th century, there really was a need for people in the physical world to experience the reality of life after death. So the spiritualist movement, it started in upstate New York, went to England, it went to continental Europe, and then it spread all over the world. And in France, Kardec was an educator. He was very intelligent, and he investigated the phenomena. And of course, he wrote under the pseudonym Allan Kardec, but his books, we just read a page from the Gospel According to Spiritism, which was written by Kardec, which is the philosophy from the spirit world in relation to the New and the Old Testament, or really the New Testament in that particular case, the interpretation. But spiritualism or spiritism is all over the world. And I know when I first went to the Philippines to work, I really loved it. It was like really, really, really good because there were so many centers all over the place. There were so many people from different backgrounds, different age groups. It wasn't just a lot of old people. There were a lot of younger people who were involved. You have the youth group. So if you go to other places, the way it's practiced, it's a little bit, in some cases, a bit different, just because there's different cultures. People have different ways of going about doing things. In the Philippines, because it was a colony of Spain for almost 300 years, you have this very strong Roman Catholic or Christian type of influence. Now, you don't really have it quite the same way if you go to other places, even though there are some places where there's still a real strong Christian influence in terms of bringing in Christian rituals or Christian theology and structure or format to how the meetings or services might be conducted. But mediumship is something that everybody has, right? Everybody has, in varying degrees, psychic or intuitive abilities. And it's something just like artistic ability or music ability, you can cultivate it. can't you? If you work at it, maybe you take classes in it, you learn from it. And ultimately, of course, when we start working with the gifts of the Spirit, we're opening up to God. And the power, where's it coming from? It's God's power. But in varying degrees, every single individual can be, if we choose to, an instrument for God to work through. So what's nice about the Spiritist movement is it brings a structure or a format in the way that power can be demonstrated through mediums. Because someone can study theology for years. Someone can be a priest or a clergy in whatever the religion, and intellectually, they study all this philosophy. They might learn so much theology, but then they still end up just having doubts about things. Maybe they even have to counsel people who are bereft, who've lost people close to them. But what's nice about when we get into the Spiritism is there's the phenomena aspect of it. There's the direct hands-on experience of communication between the spirit world and the physical world, which is really neat. So someone who might just have an idea about all life after death being a theory, right? They speculate about it, and they're not really sure, they could have doubts. When they experience actually communicating with people in the spirit world, it literally proves to them, right? It provides evidence of the reality, because we're not our physical bodies. We inhabit these physical bodies, but we eventually, what's going to happen? We have to kick the bucket, right? We're going to pass over to the spirit world, but the personality, who we are, we continue. And when we're in the spirit world, we still have connections here in this physical world, and we're going to want to try to influence and help, especially those of who we're connected to, who we love and we care about. So even though there's this physical dimension, the soul is completely transcendental compared to the temporary physical. And this is what mediumship really demonstrates to people or proves to people. The other thing, of course, is when we really do connect with higher spirits, they can impart greater wisdom and understanding to us as well, to help kind of steer us in the right direction in our own life, to live our lives according to God's laws. Because that's really the whole purpose of life. People place all this, in a general sense, all this emphasis on what's impermanent and temporary. And any type of pleasure in the material world is very limited compared to like higher spiritual pleasure or realization. Anything that we gain materially, once we pass the spirit world, it's all going to be taken away. We can't take it with us. But your spirituality you can take with you, how what you do in terms of cultivating your spirituality. So mediumship is an opportunity for those in the spirit world to communicate with us and help us, and also for us to receive the guidance and the higher higher understandings from them. And the spirit world is literally all around us. And of course, sometimes when we think about communication between the two worlds, it's not just for the people here. Oftentimes, a session with a medium, it's more to do with helping the people in the spirit world. Because someone passes over to the spirit world, I mean, if you're there, just the being able to connect with people you care about here is such a blessing. You can just imagine if you went to some place and you weren't able to communicate with your family or people who are really close to you. It'd be something that'd be very, 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 very difficult. So with mediumship, it's something which is able to be accomplished. So in the Philippines, it's really nice because there's so many different spiritist centers everywhere, and lots of mediums of all age groups. And I really liked in the Philippines the way there was a lot of work with mediums who would be entranced or controlled by the spirits, right? Where the spirits will speak, right? They influence the medium. They're able to control the voice box and speak philosophy and teachings through the medium, which is very, 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 very good. Because mediumship is something on a very high type of level. It's not about predicting the future or giving people really superficial advice. You know, what are you going to eat for dinner next week, or what color shirt should I wear this morning when I wake up? And people will ask these types of things, but
Yes.
it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be mundane. But I could talk a lot about
Yes.
mediumship, but if you certainly, but do any of you have any questions about any of this or comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, yeah.
If anybody wants to ask Stephen some questions about mediumship, feel free to ask while along our discussion. Let's make this as a sort of freewheeling discussion, if you will. Now, Stephen, can you tell us? Oh, there's a question there. Brian, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, Paul. Good evening and good morning in the US. I was just curious because I was with my friends and I just realized, or I just discovered that also in some Christian religions like Baptist or what you call this, born again, they have what they call tongues, in which there
Speaking
are
in tongues.
people.
Yeah, speaking in tongues.
Yeah. There are people or persons that speak, but with the gibberish or words that you cannot understand. How is this different from ours? Or I know that the level might be different, but can we assume that they are in a level that is, can we say, in a lower level of mediumship?
Well, okay. So you're asking about some Christian groups, some denominations of Protestantism. They
Yeah.
practice speaking in tongues,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk in all this gibberish.
Yeah.
And you listen to them with your physical ears, like, what the heck are they talking about? Now, if you read in the Corinthians, right, there's the gifts of the Spirit. One of the gifts of the Spirit is speaking in tongues. And then the idea is that someone else will be able to interpret what the gibberish means. Now, I've never experienced that type of mediumship, but I can tell you, when I have seen some Christians do it, it seems that they're just deliberately speaking gibberish. This is just what I've observed. I don't really, at least what I've seen, I don't feel they're really being influenced by a spirit to say these things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes, at least in my experience, people will do these types of things at these Christian churches, and they're not really connecting with anything. They're just doing it. And then you have
So in
people who
short,
might,
it's just for the show.
yeah, exactly. Now
Right.
I'm not completely sure. Okay,
Mhm.
with that type of that gift of the Spirit, if it was genuine, how would it actually be manifest? Now, the spirits could work with a medium and influence the medium to say gibberish. They could also influence another individual to mentally be able to know what the gibberish meant. They can tell another individual so the individual can interpret it. But just in a general sense, what purpose does it? I mean, there's a lot more effective ways or efficient ways to get that information across. I mean, why not just have the person influence the person's mind to be able to speak what the whole meaning is in the first place, you see? So I think, at least in my experience, what I've seen with some of these Christian churches is it's more like a show. The other thing is they really don't understand what medium, they don't have any understanding of mediumship in most cases. And a lot of Christians, depending on the group, even though it's in both the Old and the New Testaments, they're completely against this. You know, they don't understand, and they're afraid of it. And it's really the basis of Christianity in terms of demonstrating it. You know, Jesus appeared right after, you know, he was after his crucifixion, right, to his disciples. That's what the basis of Christianity is, which has to do with spirit communication. Mm-hmm. So all of the different gifts of the Spirit that were practiced by different prophets, if we go back in both the Old and New Testament, all of those spiritual gifts They're being demonstrated today. And there's something that, I mean, if you go to any indigenous culture, even like in the Philippines, even before, the Spanish colonized the Philippines, there would have been people indigenous living there within their society. There were healers and there were mediums, right? Intermediaries between the physical and the spiritual worlds. So it's anywhere you go in the world, there's people who are mediums. It's something which is universal. But you can ask me some more questions if you have any.
Right.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, or if there was really spirit influence happening with them, that could be an opening for them to a further understanding of mediumship, because in a way they already accept the fact that mediumship is something that happens, that the spirits are actually influencing us if we attune ourselves to them. So that could be an eye-opener for them, possibly.
It can be. The only problem with it, with a lot of, in my experience with many people who are kind of like mainstream Christians, is they can be very dogmatic and narrow in how they see things. So, for example, they might believe, oh, the Holy Spirit. But if, let's say, you were to start working, you're influenced by higher spirits, they would just say, oh my gosh, this person's possessed by a demon.
Yeah.
This type of thing. We need to give them electric shock treatment and cure them of the demonic force.
Right.
So it's how they interpret it. But there's a lot of they're not very scientific about it, right? There's a lot of misunderstanding about it. Now, you do have people who are within Christianity who are really open-minded. I've done talks at mainstream Christian churches. It's just kind of, it depends on the denomination, but also who's running things or who's involved. Some people are very open-minded, and some are just very narrow and closed.
Yeah.
If you don't follow things the way they do it, even if you're a Christian, they'll have a problem with it.
All right. Brother Abner?
Well, first of all, like I said, I want to thank Stephen for being here with us. Actually, it was very short notice. It was Brother Paul actually who shared his, I think it was part of YouTube, or he shared it with us, and I read it. That's how we kind of get connected again somehow, because Stephen and I met a few times at the airport at one time, but we have actually
stayed
at
at your
one
house
time
once.
he's left in our house. Here in San Diego. But when I was reading his what he has written in his visit in the Philippines, it was kind of detailed. It was very interesting, and I love it. So this is how. So I said, man, let me contact Stephen again. And so I found out he's here in the States, and now he's here with us. So thank you. You talked a little bit about the culture. We have cultural differences, and you probably have seen that during your visit in the Philippines.
Yeah, I have, definitely.
Because as we have discussed in our discussion before, many Espiritista, we call Espiritista, in the Philippines, some of us, most of us, actually, based on the book of Allan Kardec, we believe in reincarnation, for example. That is the accepted beliefs in the Spiritista. Then you visited some areas in the Philippines that even they would also belong to the Spiritista, but they don't believe in it, or they have a different belief. So
yeah, that's right.
But the mediums that are who believes in, for example, in reincarnation, so they speak about the karma, reincarnation. Then you go to other areas in the Philippines where they don't believe in reincarnation. So the mediums is also kind of speak based on not on the reincarnation itself, but for example, on their own beliefs. That's why, in a way, we kind of divide. Even it's like, sometimes I ask, even the medium, I said, or the spirits, they kind of divided in their message. Is it that based on the culture? Like what you
Well, it
said.
has to do, okay, so it's interesting because you have people, if here in this physical world, they're just different places. Some people have really evolved spiritually. You have people who are really intelligent, people who aren't so intelligent, people who maybe are very ethical, very moral, very spiritually oriented. And then you have the exact opposite. So Jesus teaches, in my Father's house are many mansions. And this is discussed in the Spirit's book as well, but there's different levels of the Spirit, right? So when someone passes over, right, they leave their physical body, based on someone's consciousness, they're going to go to a different level. So when it comes to mediumship, you can have a medium and they think a certain way. They will attract spirits of that type of mentality to them as well. And just because someone's in the spirit world doesn't mean they're really evolved. It also doesn't mean that they necessarily know everything. And also there's just difference of views on some things as well. But reincarnation is a fact. I mean, it's something which is it's based on fact. But there are some people they're not able to accept this. That's just basically where they're at. You know, they're very close to it. So there's certainly someone you could be in the spirit world. You go there and you're just ignorant. That doesn't mean that you have to stay ignorant, because there's always opportunities for growth. But it's just like if someone doesn't want to go to school here in this physical world, you can't force them to do that. And even if they do go to school, they don't necessarily have to be able to do a good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stephen, can you share to us how you started becoming a medium? First, can you tell us, is mediumship, in a way you mentioned it during your discussion a while ago, that it is an ability that could be developed, explored, and there are some people who seem to have been born with it, and there are people who acquired it through study during their life. In your particular case, how did you start becoming?
Okay. So, in my particular case, I mean, it's really both. Okay, so I first communicated with the spirit world when I was 2 years old. My mom's father communicated with me, who I'd never met, my grandfather. And that's like really normal. I mean, any of you have had children or grandchildren, you know, especially when they're very little, they're just very open to these types of things. So in some cultures, that might even be encouraged. But in a lot of cases, it ends up getting, you know, shut down as someone goes through the educational system, or they're told that it's, you know, evil, or you don't want to do that, or that
something
doesn't
wrong with you
exist.
mentally.
Yeah, which
Yes,
is what
yes.
happens. But every one of you, I mean, for example, probably could learn how to draw. I mean, I think, in fact, even if you didn't learn how to draw, if I gave you some paint and some paper or something, you could probably paint something or draw something on it, you know, some crayons. And some of you would be really good. And others of you might be like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. You know, you'd want to hide it. But
Yes.
thing is why is someone come into this into life and they're really artistically, or like, where do they get that skill from? So if we think about reincarnation, it's very possible, most likely, right, that they've had other human births where they've done art and they come in with that talent. However, even somebody who they just don't feel like they don't have any ability, well, if they went to a class and they participated with, you know, an instructor in the right educational environment, they could definitely improve their ability. They might have to work at it a lot. So mediumship, if we use that analogy, is kind of the same way. If you can have someone who's, I mean, like I said, it's natural. Everybody has this in varying degrees. Let's just say there's someone, they're very analytical. They work as an engineer. You know, they just think logically about everything. They're not really in touch with their feeling and their intuitive side of themselves. Well, there's a lot of different exercises you could do, you know, educationally, because I teach people like that. It's sometimes very challenging for someone, but they can develop the mediumship. It's also, there's different spiritual gifts. There's different phases of mediumship. Like with Abner, maybe we could levitate to the ceiling, right? They levitate you right up the spirits. Now, with someone else, maybe they hear the spirits, right? They're clairaudient. It's different for different people. And the spirits, when they decide to work with someone, they assess them. They figure, okay, this person has this potential, and they'll try to steer that person in that direction, you know, in terms of their training and their experiences. And it's also something which, with mediumship development, it's usually something, you know, over a period of time, someone will start to open up and acquire the gifts. But to learn how to work with the different abilities, the different aspects of mediumship, it's something which really has to take place over a period of time, because you have to learn how to discipline it, you know, how to control it, how to discipline yourself as part of the process. So you do have some people, and they're just really open, right? They hear voices or they see spirits, and they don't have a clue about what they're doing. And with mediumship, the training part's very, very important. Now, in the Philippines, I've seen two schools of thought within the Espiritista, right? You have the ones who are very scientific, logical, you know, there's training, there's education. Then you have this other aspect, and it's just sort of ignorant. I mean this in a nice way, but it's very superstitious. Oh, God's giving us these gifts and we don't have to do anything. Now, the sentiment's really nice in all respect, but in my own experience teaching mediumship, I've been just my whole life, people who are like, if you don't have training, how you go about doing it, it's just not the same compared to someone who is trained in terms of how you'd work with other people, you know, in a professional sense. I mean, it would be like if I was going to work as a dentist and I'd studied it online. You know, I went online, I found some dental manual. I have pliers. Abner, you could do this. Go in your garage, and you've got the pliers. You could have like a dental clinic. Now, I bet Abner could remove people's teeth in this neighborhood. And if he did it enough, he'd probably get pretty good at it. You know, he'd have a little place to put the blood. And so with mediumship, it's kind of the same way, but there's so much to it. So if you have people who are more experienced, who you can study with, who can mentor you, you know, who you can work with, or you have like a group, even, you know, in a scientific type sense, there's certain conditions. If you establish those conditions, they're conducive for development and unfoldment. Now, if you go back in the early years of this movement, in the 1850s, there weren't teachers. People didn't really understand how it worked. And the spirits, they would take people, a lot of times they were like children or adolescents, they would entrance them and just work with them. And it was a very different type of situation. But over a period of time, the spirits provided guidance to people in terms of the development, which is why Kardec put together the Medium's book, which is like really probably like the first, to my knowledge, real book that's like a manual on the mechanics of spirit communication, how to work with it. Because people would just meet, right? They might go to Abner's house and sit in the living room, you know, and try to see what would happen. Is the table going to move? You know, is there going to be some kind of phenomena? But they didn't know what was going on. So it's kind of like over a period of time, people learned, they got instruction from the higher spirits on how to develop and how to proceed with mediumship. Because there definitely are right ways of working with mediumship, and there's definitely ways that just are not the best ways. Just like if you're going to do surgery, you know, or do dental, you know, take out people's teeth. I'm sure if you were self-taught and then you went to a dental school, you'd be really, they would have to really shut you down and retrain you. So that's what I would say about that.
Yes. Really, really good info.
Yeah, so you mentioned, right, there are different types of mediumship, clairaudient, mental mediumship, physical mediumship. Can you tell us briefly what's the difference between mental and physical mediumship? We've been hearing about these things. So,
well, okay, so with mental mediumship is what most of you have probably experienced mental mediumship. Let's say you go in the Philippines, you go to the Spiritist Center and you have a medium and the spirits entrance the medium and they speak through the medium and you can hear the medium talking. The medium gives some maybe some philosophy at the meeting. Now, the only person, even though you're experiencing the medium speaking, it really is the medium's internal experience. That type of mediumship, it's dependent upon the medium's connection with the spirit world, right? Their mental attunement. And it's an internal experience. Now, you could have someone at the center, and maybe they're just completely deluded, like they're imagining all this stuff in their head, or maybe they're dishonest and they're just saying things. They're pretending that they're speaking. You see, so with mental mediumship, or maybe someone hears spirits, or they see a spirit, and they're clairvoyant. All of that is a subjective experience. It involves the intuitive mind of the medium. Even though they may be sharing the information with other people, it's something that's really is just taking place inside their own head. And their mentality, their spirituality, their emotions, all of these things dealing on a subtle mental level have a bearing on the types of communications, right? Like attracts like. And one of the laws of mediumship is, like attracts like. What we put out, we attract similar-minded personalities in the spirit world to work with us. Now, physical phenomena, physical mediumship, very, 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 very different, because it's something which involves the spirit chemists, and they'll use the energies of the medium to produce physical phenomena or manifestations, which are objectively experienced through your 5 physical senses. So in other words, I was talking about Abner levitating to the ceiling. That would be physical mediumship. If we were there, everybody would see it. Now, it could be Abner's wife's in the other room, pulling a pulley up. But if that was happening, we'd see it too. It's different that, Abner says, I have this vision, I saw Jesus, and Jesus said this to me, and, I'm seeing this. Now, he could be, maybe he's really experiencing that, but it's in his head, you see? With mediumship, you can have spirits, for example, they use the substance called ectoplasm. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the Ghostbusters movies with the ectoplasm, but ectoplasm is something, it's not like the movies, but it's a substance which they extract from the body of the medium, and they're able to actually use it to produce the phenomena. For example, they can place it over the face of the medium, and they can mold it. It's like a mask. They can mold it into the features of, let's say, your grandmother who's in the spirit world. Or they can, if they have enough of the ectoplasm, actually make a full form, and you can actually see the spirit. There's also, they're able to produce spirit voices, and you can hear the spirit speaking with your physical ears. And sometimes it's pretty neat. You can have what's called like a trumpet. I've got some in the other room. Actually, look, I'll grab one of my trumpets. Just wait. So this is a spirit trumpet. And this is a device which is used, it's just like Moses received the 10 Commandments spoken through a ram's horn. This is a spirit trumpet. It's made out of aluminum. It's lightweight. So the spirits are able to take this and use it and speak through it. And it's something that during a meeting, the spirits can levitate this around the room, and it can hit you over the head. But this is a type of physical mediumship. So voice mediumship, which can be used with a trumpet, can also be done without a trumpet too. I can think of times, where you actually have the voice, you can hear the voice in the room with your physical ears. I knew this one medium in upstate New York, who's passed over. She's quite elderly, and she used to have it, the voice speaking in the area of her solar plexus. So she could be talking to someone, and this other people could actually hear the spirits' voices from the region of our solar plexus. So that's a type of physical mediumship. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different types of mediumship, physical as well as mental. You can classify them all.
Yep. Okay. So that particular voice that people in the room can actually hear, not actually coming from the medium speaking. So
it's
that's
not the medium speaking. It's it's artificially produced, by the
so
spirits.
there's a difference between a medium who speaks out of the messages he or she receives through her mind.
Yeah.
And when you
That's
can hear
different.
voice.
That's different. But really the only person who's experiencing that is the medium. And like I said, the medium could just be totally lying, or they could be deluded. There's a fine line between someone's imagination and something which is actually real, you see. Which is why you want to test the medium, test the spirits. Don't just because someone says, "Oh, I'm a medium and I'm seeing this," Saint Michael is telling me this and you should do this.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but don't give up your intelligence, your
So in
common
that
sense.
particular case, Stephen, you said that mental mediumship is something that happens completely within the mind of the medium, and it is something very subjective. It's very hard for the audience to tell if there was really a spirit influence.
Well,
how can we tell
there's a couple things. I mean, first of all, okay, as a medium, I'm experienced as a medium, so in a general sense, I can connect in with other people. So if there's another medium working, their energy field is opened up. It's like really expanded, and you can actually, there's a connection there. It's not just, even though the mediums experience it in their mind, there really is a spirit world. And when you're talking to spirit people mentally, telepathically, they're actually there. And you can discern that. So someone who's a medium, they can connect with another medium who's working, and they're going to be able to sense the spirits or kind of connect in with the connections that are there. Now someone who's not able to do that, if you're going to test a medium, well, what is the medium saying to you? Now, there are some places where you go, literally, where mediums will keep files on people. They know everyone's loved ones, and they lie, right? They're dishonest mediums. They cheat people, things like this. And they even something like this phenomena, right? They might have someone come out and they wear a glow-in-the-dark sheet or clothes, and they're a spirit, and people believe this. So there's real phenomena, there's real mediumship, and there's fake things too. It's like money. There's counterfeit money. It's not real pesos. It's counterfeit. Someone prints it up in their room, and maybe someone who can't tell the difference. So you need to go to someone who's an expert. You say, okay, this is a fake peso. So with mediumship, it's kind of the same way, but you want to test the medium, and really the spirits can tell you things that, and it's like, what are they talking about? And then you go home. You talk to your husband or your wife, or you talk to someone else in the family, or maybe an older relative, and they go, "Oh my gosh, yeah," they recognize the information. You see, so the spirits, they want us to use our intelligence when it comes to all of these things. It's really, 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 really important, and everything. Now, and there's been a lot of brilliant scientists, if we go back into the 19th century, who studied the phenomena. They studied mediums. They did research with mediums. I've worked with different scientists in the past too, where they research mediums, this type of thing. And a lot of it's really not taken too seriously nowadays, unfortunately. But you can be a magician and do magic tricks and trick people. Everything's all dark, do fake type phenomena. But there's also real phenomena. So the education part's really important, because you have mediums that, let's say they want to control people, or they want to manipulate people. So they could be at a center, maybe it could be in the Philippines. They could run a center. I'm a medium, and maybe they want things done a certain way. So they could just say, I'm a spirit. Saint Michael's telling me, or at the Archangel Raphael, and he's telling me that you need to do this. And people would believe it if they're ignorant, right? If they're not questioning things. So just because someone says something. Also, as a medium, when I receive information, for example, some of it, how am I interpreting the information? My mind's involved. Now, if I leave little bits of the information out, or maybe I add things to it, or I make some type of assumption, I can change the meaning of what's coming through. It could just be a little bit, or it could be really big, you see? So you can have even an honest medium make mistakes. They say something just a little bit, that they're imperfect as a channel for the spirits to work through. And there's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean they're not a good medium, but that's why the training is really, really important, because it's going to prevent error, or certainly minimize the error when it does take place. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Okay, we have some mediums here. Let's see, Sister Rebecca, can you show yourself, please? Our medium friends here, if you have some questions to Stephen, feel free to ask questions, particularly about your experience as mediums. Sister Rebecca? Hello? Sister Rebecca, are you here?
Opo. Kaya lang I can't speak fluently in English, so I can express
fine.
myself if it will be rendered in English.
Yeah, but Brother Abner will interpret. He will translate. Go ahead.
Kasi,
Yeah, if you want to speak and then just speak, and then Abner, you can just translate into English. I mean, if that's easier.
Actually, it could be the same thing. Like my interpretation might be the same.
Yeah, well, that's what happens
mediumship.
exactly. You could say something off a little bit.
kasi, sige
You'll be
po.
good. You'll be good,
So,
Sister Rebecca.
I will speak in Filipino. Then,
Sige po.
whoever can translate it, please translate. Kasi, okay. Sige, ganito po. Ako po naging, mula pa sa pagkabata, nasaan ka na ako ng mga espiritista. Mula sa ninuno, hanggang sa magulang, hanggang sa ngayon. Sa espiritismo po ako lumaki. Ngayon, nagbigay ng daan para po ako ay maging isang medium, yung times na yung aking nanay ay isang medium din, ang aking tatay ay pangulo sa loob ng aming dunduyan, then may pagsasanay po ng mediumship tuwing Sabado ng gabi. And then, I was grade 4 din. Grade 4 po ako noon. Nang dumating yung aking ama at ang aking ina galing sa sentro, gabi po kasi kami, alas 7 hanggang alas 9 ng gabi ang aming session. Nung sila ay matapos, pag uwi nila sa bahay, gising pa po ako kasi iniintay ko sila na dumating. Meron pong sinabi sa akin yung aking ama at saka ang aking ina na hindi ko po naiintindihan pa kasi hindi naman ako talaga active na dumadalo dahil bata po kasi ako, kung kailan ko gusto, kung hindi ko gusto, gano'n. Hindi naman po ako pinipilit. Then, ang sabi nila sa akin pagdating nung makitang gising pa ako, sabi sa akin, anak, halika, may sasabihin kami sa iyo. Ang sabi niya sa akin, kasi anak, ito sasabihin namin sa iyo, kung papayag ka. Sabi kasi ni Arkanghel Rafael, hindi ko po kilala yung sabi ni Arkanghel Rafael, hinihingi ka nila sa amin. Yun po yung sabi, hindi ko naiintindihan, ang akala ko, ipapaampun niyo po ako? Yan ang sabi ko, ba't niyo po ako ipapaampun? Buhay naman po kayo. Ba't niyo ako ipapaampun? Sabi ko ganun. Ayoko akong ipaampun niyo kasi gusto ko sa inyo kasi kayo ang talagang magulang ko. Then sabi ulit sa akin na tumawa silang dalawa. Sabi, basta hinihingi ka sa amin ni Arkanghel Rafael. Sabi ko, sino po ba yung tao na yun? Sabi kong ganon. Ang sagot nila sa akin, hindi siya tao. Kung hindi siya ay isang higher spirit o batlaya doon na sa pag-aaral, sinabi nila sa amin na hinihingi ka niya para maglingkod sa loob ng lunduyan as a medium. Yun po yung sabi. So, doon po ngayon nagsimula. Sabi ko, medium? Ano yung medium? Kasi wala akong alam talaga eh. Ano yung medium? Sabi kong ganun. And then, na ano yun, sabi ko, ayoko po. Sabi ko ganon. Ayoko po, tay. Ayoko po, nay. Ayoko, hindi ko naiintindihan. Ayoko po pasukin ang isang bagay na hindi ko naiintindihan. Pero iniisip ko po yun. Ngayon, sabi niya, tinaliwanag niya, ang ibig sabihin no, magiging katulad ka ng nanay mo na ikaw ay gaganap as a medium. Yung bang nagsasalita ng hindi sa sarili niya, kung hindi, tinatanggap niya yun mula doon sa kanyang diwa na ipinararating sa kanya ng spirit at yun ang sinasabi niya na messages na ibig sabihin noong spirit na gagamit sa kanya. Sabi ko, ganun ba? Para pong na-curious ako. So sa pagiging curious ko, sabi ko, nandito po yung parang wala talaga akong alam, sabi ko. Magsasalita kasi hindi ko po naririnig ang nanay ko na nagmi-medium kasi hindi nga po ako pumupunte. Sabi ko, totoo nga kaya ako na hindi nanggagaling sa isip yun ng isang nagsasalita doon. Yun yung kinu-question ko. Paano yun? Paano magko-communicate yung tao doon sa isang espiritu na? Parang hindi ko matanggap, siguro bata pa rin ako, parang hindi ko matanggap na pwede ba yun na magamit o makapag-ugnay yung spirit doon sa isang tao na may buhay o buhay pa. Sabi ko, o sige, titingnan ko nga. Pero hindi ako seryoso, sabi ko. Subukin ko nga kung talagang ako ay magsasalita ng hindi sa sarili ko at merong nagbibigay sa akin. Kaya sabi ko, sige tatay, mag-aaral ako, magsasanay ako, pero para lang pumanubok, ay gano'n. Para lang talaga i-test, mapatunayan ko sa sarili ko na totoo yun. O di nung ako po sige kanya, o di isang nung Sabado, next na Saturday, sumama na po ako, then pinaupo nila ako.
Sister
Meron
Becca,
munang isa.
Sister
Opo.
Becca,
Opo.
pause muna. Sasabihin muna natin kay Stephen kung
Sige, mahaba na.
pero
Opo.
tuloy natin. Sasabihin muna natin sa kanya kung ano nang nasabi mo para makasunod siya. That's
Yeah.
quite a long message, Stephen. So let me see if I
Sige.
can still remember what
Okay.
you said.
To cut it
Okay.
short,
Yeah.
sige, to
Pause ka
cut it
muna.
short.
Sasabihin ko muna yung sinabi niyong una. So
Sige po,
what
opo.
Sister Becca has been telling us, Stephen, is that she grew up in a family of spiritists for several generations of spiritists. That's the type of family she was reared into. Her mom was a medium, and then her dad was a president of their local center. And so she was just 4 years old in the grade 4. How old were you then, Sister Rebecca?
Mga ano po, mga 9 years
Okay,
old po
she
ako.
was 9 years old when one night after her parents came from the center, they talked to her, to Rebecca, and her dad said to her that the spirit called Raphael, Archangel Raphael, that's the name of the spirit, calls himself or herself, wanted her parents to give Rebecca to them. And Rebecca could not understand what they were saying. And she said, are you giving me away to somebody else? You were my parents. Why are you going to give me away to this Raphael guy? She said. And then the parents laughed and they said, no, we're not giving you away. Raphael wanted you to become a medium to serve in the center. And then she said, what's a medium? So they explained to her that a medium is like what we know, an intermediary between the spirit world and the material world. She'll be receiving communications or messages from the spirit, which she would relay to the people living in this world. He said, does that really happen? She said. So she said she can't believe that a spirit can do that. So she said, okay, I'll try it. I'll try. So that's did I get everything
Opo.
After,
Yes
after?
po.
Sister
Yes
Rebecca?
po.
Okay.
Very clear po.
Okay, continue, continue.
So, nung ako po nag-aral na, then meron umunang parang pinaka-official medium na siyang nanguna. Then pagkatapos po niya, pinaupo ako. And then sabi niya, o sige, maupo ka. Kasi may aparato po kami, yung tawag doon, yung aparato na table, yung turning table. Meron pong ganon. O sige, maupo ka. Ilagay mo yung dalawang palad mo o kamay mo doon sa aparato o hapinog, yun po ang tawag namin. At manahimik ka. Yung isip mo, itahimik mo. Sabi ko, sa isip ko lang yun, paano ko yung gagawin? Wala naman akong alam. Pero sumunod ako, sige, umupo ako, nilagay ko yung kamay ko doon sa table, and then pagkatapos, nakadilat po ako, may mga ano yun, may mga letter na nakalagay from A to Z and number 1 hanggang 0. 10. So, nung ilagay ko yung kamay ko, ang nangyari sa akin, nanginig po ako. Yung, hindi ko alam, parang parang ako ay binalot ng yung malamig, parang yelo, parang ginanon ako, parang nilagay ako doon sa loob ng yelo, na nanginig po ako, nanginig yung kamay ko, nanginig ako na hindi ko siya mapigil. Then, nung ako'y nanginginig, yung pong kamay ko nakapatong, pero yung table, kusang, umiikot, gumagalaw. Sabi ko, pero nanginginig po ako, kusa siyang gumagalaw. Ngayon, pinipigil ko, dinidiin ko yung kamay ko, kasi tinitingnan ko po talaga, dinidiin ko yung kamay ko. Sabi ko, bakit gumagalaw ka ba? O yung kamay ko lang nagpapagalaw sa'yo? So, dinidiin ko yung kamay ko, pero kahit po idiin ko yung kamay ko, talaga po siya kusang naggumagalaw, kusang umiikot din. Umiikot siyang ganun. Habang umiikot siya, parang ako hindi ko alam kung natatakot ba ako o ano nang mixed emotion po ako na hindi ko alam. Then, umiikot siya. Siguro po mga matagal-tagal din po yun. Inabot din po siguro ng 5 minutes na ganun. Pero hindi po ako nagsasalita kasi ang pinapakiramdaman ko yung nangyayari sa akin. And then pagkatapos po noon, parang noong medyo matagal-tagal na, kusa siyang huminto. Kusang huminto yung pag-ikot. Then sabi ko, huminto na siya. Tingnan ko nga uli. Sabi ko, tingnan ko uli kung talagang ako ang nagpaikot o talagang merong kusang nagpaikot. Then, iniikot ko. Pinipihit ko, pero hindi ko po mapihit. Para po bang mabigat siya. Hindi siya talaga mapihit. Pero talaga yung nasa ano na ako, yung parang nasa sarili ko na ako, nasa senses ko na ako, pero hindi pa ako umaalis. Although, naririnig ko, kasi sa amin pagtapos na, binabateng niyan, yung ginagano, may bell. So, binebell, narinig ko yung bell, pero ayokong tumayo kasi tinetest ko talaga. So, iniikot kong ganun, talagang hindi siya umiikot. Sabi ko, talagang hindi pala ako. Then, yun po yung una kong, yun yung first day ng pag-aaral ko, be as a medium.
Okay, let's see if we can interpret that. So anyway, so she finally decided to attend the session and participate in the practice for development for her development as a medium. So they have an official medium at the center. She is the one supervising the development of mediums there. So when she went to the center, they asked her to sit by the table for mediums, and they have a turning table. They call it aparato. I don't know if you've seen one.
I've seen those. They're pretty
Oh,
cool.
okay, all right. So they ask her to concentrate, close her eyes, concentrate, and put her hands on top of that aparato. We call it aparato.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And the moment she said, the moment she placed her hands on the aparato, she felt sudden chills, like she was enveloped by ice. She was,
yes.
she felt it, and then the apparatus started turning, and at that moment she thought, was I the one turning the apparato, or were my hands doing it, or somebody else? So she tried to press her hands too hard against the apparato, so that she would know that she's not the one turning it. But then the apparato kept turning and turning. So that's what she said, her first experience about mediumship.
Yeah, that's a really awesome story. I really like that. So thank you so much for sharing that. But when the spirits come very close, you'll feel the temperature change. It's just like ice cold. So it can be very warm, but it's like it's called a psychic breeze, but you'll actually feel. And so when you have, earlier you were asking about how do you discern if someone's really working? Let's say you were holding a meeting and they're going to work with trance, where they control and speak through someone. You'll actually feel in the atmosphere of the space, of the room, this icy cold feeling. Maybe even before the meeting started, the energy will be there, and they're preparing for this. Same thing with physical phenomena mediumship. Oftentimes there's extreme temperature changes, right? And you'll experience these psychic breezes. So part of the discernment is being able to actually really, feel the conditions and everything too, which is
anyone
pretty neat.
who is sensitive, they could sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but it's interesting though, because you can have someone who, like I said, they're like an engineer, they're really analytical, and you could like come up behind them and they wouldn't even know you were there. But most people, if you did that, let's say we had them turn away, they couldn't see who's behind them, over a short period of time, they would have a sensation here, right? Because their energy field would be open. They could feel the energy of the other person. So, but even someone who's very blocked off and not in touch with this, if they kind of put energy into it and worked at it, that's something they could learn. They could get more into touch with their own intuitive abilities.
Now, I'm sure there are dangers accompanying the practice of mediumship, and can you tell us what are these dangers and how to avoid these dangers?
With the spirit world, it's just like if you were going to go scuba diving, right? We're going to go into the water and go scuba diving. You might want to have someone with you when you did it, just for safety. But mediumship is something which it's totally natural. It's really safe, and it's a really good thing. However, if someone doesn't really understand it and they're doing it for frivolous reasons, really very superficial, perhaps they're intoxicated. I remember on Facebook, for example, there's all these different Facebook groups that you can be members of, some of which are for mediumship. People interested in mediumship, they'll all go there and they'll ask questions, and I remember I was looking at this a few years ago during COVID. I was reading this one thing, and this one woman, she writes on her Facebook post, "Oh, well, me and my husband, we went to the bar the other night. It was on a Friday night, and I was giving lots of readings, So she went there, and I guess was like doing mediumship at the bar, like she's drinking alcohol, doing mediumship. Now, that's just completely insane. It's really very, very stupid. It's not good. Now, if you drink alcohol, I don't drink alcohol. I've never drunk alcohol in my life. Don't drink at all. But someone who does drink, they kind of open up. But I was talking before about like attracts like. You want your mind to be in a not just receptive state of mind. You want your consciousness to be clean. Intoxication, it messes up your consciousness, and it opens you up, but not really to a high type of level in the spirit world. And so when you do mediumship, if you're opening up to a lower level, you can get people who are just really unreliable in the spirit world telling you things. They're not necessarily evil or they're not necessarily bad spirits, but they're just individuals who are ignorant. And it's unreliable information. It'd be like if you were lost in some city, someone goes to San Diego and they ask directions, and then they wind up a completely different place because the direction's wrong. Well, you wouldn't want to ask that person. You want to ask someone who actually knows what they're talking about. So with mediumship, you know, there's a time and a place for when we do it. We want there needs to be reverence for what's taking place, but also someone who's doing it should know what they're actually doing, which is why it's really good to have, you know, people who are more experienced, you know, to mentor you, to kind of guide you. You don't just like open up on television. They have different shows for mediumship in the United States and in Europe. And on some of these shows, the mediums just walk up to people. They could be in the mall. They walk up to people and they give them messages. So that's really nice on TV, but it's unreliable. It's something that you learn your very first class in mediumship. You learn only open up when you're in class. You know, you want quality with what you're doing. You want to work with the highest and the best. You want truth to come through, not just rubbish. Does that make sense?
Now, can a medium tell if the spirit that is influencing him or her, communicating through him, is of a higher level or a lower level?
Yeah,
In terms of
definitely.
the vibrations, the feelings?
Yeah, you can tell. You can sense. You can feel the vibration. Now keep in mind. I mean, okay, if you're a developed medium, I should say an experienced medium, you have a lot of training and discipline for what you do. It's not like you're just randomly opening up to anybody in the spirit world. It's like a planned out process. It's carefully orchestrated by higher spirits. Now, when I work, for example, as a medium, I you know, there may be different relatives, like I bring through someone's grandmother, or I bring through someone's brother or a friend who's passed a spirit, or just other people. They're not necessarily on the highest type of level, but the spirits who work with you, the guides who help you with this, they're specialists with this type of communication. Just as a medium learns how to work with them, they're also learning how to work with a medium over a period of time. And that doesn't happen overnight. That's why the training's real important. But they vet whoever's going to come through. They don't just allow anyone coming in. And they also function as intermediaries with that person to assist with the process and everything. So you might, as a medium, be describing someone's mother in the spirit world, but that mother is coming through other spirits, and she's being permitted to come through. So someone who lacks the training, they can just like open up to anybody, which might not be so good. But if you're working with higher spirits, they have it all carefully planned out. Now, I know in my own experience, sometimes, you know, the spirits that do come through could be in very, very, very low levels. Like they might have sexually abused children, or they might have murdered people, things like this, and they'll come through. But they're being permitted by higher spirits, and it's for the purpose of healing and helping the person here in the physical world, but also helping them with their progression, you see? It's not like you're just opening up to someone.
So there are
you're in a bar and you're opening up to anybody.
Gatekeepers, something like that.
Yeah. You have it's regulated. You know, it's like a doorkeeper, gatekeeper, and it's just like they know how to work with their particular medium. They've trained with the medium over years, so they're going to be able to help present the information to the medium, so the medium will be able to say it the right way and convey the information accurately, which is really, really important.
Very nice, very nice. That's very good information, Stephen. Brother Ben, I'm sure you have questions to Stephen.
There's no questions
Oh,
on the.
sure, go ahead.
There's a question on the chat.
Oh, let's see on the chat. Is this the question about
Pong Raymond. Okay, I'm gonna read it. Good evening. May we ask questions about
jewelry
the
and everything
jewelries that the medium's wearing during trance? What is the impact of this? Is there any advantage or disadvantage?
Okay. All right. So the question is if you're a medium and you're working and you wear jewelry, is that going to affect? I've actually heard this before when I was in the Philippines. Someone was telling me about this. Okay, first of all, if you're wearing jewelry, it's not really going to have any kind of bearing on connecting to the spirit world one way or another. That's my own experience. And all of this is scientific. And so with mental mediumship, it's your mind that matters. your energy that matters, that's making the connection with the spirits. You could be wearing anything, or you could be not wearing anything. You could wear all different colors or different pieces of jewelry. It's not going to get in the way of the communication, unless somehow you psychologically think that it is, you see. Now, there's certainly certain types of jewelry. I mean, it has vibration to it, and that vibration can certainly probably enhance your own vibration, this type of thing. Like sometimes someone has a crystal, or they have different stones or things of this type of sort. But actually, in terms of the mediumship, all of that doesn't really have so much of a bearing on anything, you know, whether you're wearing it or not. That's what I would say about that. Nothing wrong with that per se. Does that make sense? I know maybe someone's been taught something differently too. I mean, there are people
Or unless
that
the
teach
jewelry
something.
will distract your audience, and they would focus more on the jewelry you're
Well,
wearing.
let me tell you a story. Okay, this maybe 10 years ago. This is here in the States. I was teaching, you know, I teach mediumship full time, so I work in a lot of different countries all over, and I've seen like all sorts of things. So this is in America, and America is a little strange. And I was teaching this course on mediumship, and we were doing work with trance. And I think everybody in this workshop, they're all women. You get more women who are involved in mediumship. And we had this one young woman. She was from Los Angeles at the time, California. California is very crazy, isn't it, Abner? Now, you'll like this. So we were going to do the channeling. The people are going to learn how to trance channel. And she comes to the meeting in the morning. She's wearing her cleavage of her breasts. So you can see half of her breasts. She had this giant crystal that she was wearing as right here between her breasts. Now, the idea behind this, I think, was to help her with, somehow it was going to give her this power to channel. But you should have seen the expression of all the other women are just like, oh my God, what is this? You see?
Distracting.
So I think if there were men there, they would have been distracted. Not by the crystal, but just how she was dressed, you see?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyone else? Let's take this opportunity to ask questions about mediumship. I mean, Stephen, like I said, has written a book about mediumship, the mastery of mediumship.
Well, I've written
part
2
two
books.
also.
I've written this Mediumship Mastery, The Ultimate
There's
Guide.
part 2, right?
That's my first book. And then there's Mediumship Mastery 2, Advanced Techniques That Work. And this is my second book. And I'm working on the third book too. But I'm really into the teaching aspect. So, but my books are available on Amazon, which are probably expensive if you live in the Philippines, you know, the shipping and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But
Digital copies, you can get them, right?
yeah.
Okay. You can order them digital versions on Kindle.
I think we will
Oh
order
yeah, well
one
the
because
second book's on Kindle. You can the first book I don't have as an ebook yet, but the second book, yeah, you could do it digitally, which
You
is
should
a really
get the first one in digital too.
well, I want to, you know, it's just the graphic artist I worked with, a friend of mine, this is going back, he didn't really know how to do that. It just didn't end up happening, but I'm probably gonna, yeah, you know, revise it and have it that way too, because it's easier for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah.
so we can order it in Amazon, the hard copy. We can
I'm
order
sorry,
it in
say that again
Amazon.
after?
We can order it in Amazon.
Yeah, both of these and everything.
Copy.
I do talk about, you know, the Philippines. I think in both of these books a little better. I remember, you know, different things with mediumship, and
Okay.
I really love the Philippines.
Get those books, yeah. Brian, Brian has a question. Go ahead.
It's me again. So, how did you know, or what are the when did you realize that you have these medium abilities? You know, how did you discover it yourself, or?
Well, I said earlier, you know, the first time the spirits talked to me is when I was 2 years old. And so my grandfather talked to me, and then he wanted me to tell my mom that he had talked to me. So he made me promise. So then anyway, so that was my first experience when I was 2 years old. Now that's not unusual. That's pretty normal and everything. So then when I was young, as a child, I was always very, very, very open to the spirit world and very sensitive. I'm very artistically oriented too. And I think in general, people who develop mediumship oftentimes are very much in touch with their creative abilities. Maybe they're a musician or they're an artist or they write, but they use that intuitive part of their mind quite a bit. But I also, when I was little, Brian, I learned how to meditate. My mom and we went to a meditation group and I learned meditation. And I was always drawn to this type of thing. I remember when I was very little, I saw this one British medium working on television. They had a spiritualist center in England, in London, and this medium was working. And I remember that really stood out. I didn't really know why. So I think with mediumship, it was something that I was supposed to get into. And once you get into it, you can't get out of it. It's a really good thing.
Okay, we have
So are
another-
you saying your parents are some kind of they have some background in?
No, not at all. But my mom was interested in meditation at the time. So we went and took this class. So I remember being in the class and I couldn't sit still. I was on my chair and all the adults were really annoyed because I was like moving all around my legs and making all this noise. Because I was a kid, you just have all this energy and you can't sit still. So, but yeah, but my parents weren't interested or involved in this at all. No, it's not that they were opposed or anything. I didn't have that kind of problem, but it wasn't something where I was. I mean, I've got 4 children, and they've all been exposed to that, from when they were little, from their babies, and then on their mom's side of the family, they would be like 5th generation, being involved with that.
Okay.
Which
we have another question from Brother Abraham here. How long it takes you to recognize yourself? How long it took you to recognize yourself as a medium?
Oh, well, with mediumship, as I said, it's natural ability. The trainings, you're going to grow and expand with it. In terms of, you never stop being a student. So I've been into it, like I say, throughout my whole life, and certainly a lot of that time. I mean, I still feel I'm a student. I'm still training. I'm still learning. In the organization that I'm part of, they have a formal education and they have formal training for it. Some of which is like academic, and they have certification for mediumship as well. So, but that doesn't really. That means you've reached a certain level of proficiency, but I'm always still trying to improve as my work as a medium, trying to get better, more accurate, more like stronger in terms of the spirits being able to work with me. So that's something which, you never really stop growing with it unless you let yourself. Now, there's some people, especially in the States, I don't think you have this mentality in the Philippines the same way, but in Europe or the States, people want things instantly. They go to the weekend. I want to get my PhD. Does anyone have a PhD here? Does anyone? Some of you probably have master's degrees, right? And spent years. You have to study. Well, can you imagine if you went for a weekend, like 1 or 2 days, or for an afternoon, and then you call yourself doctor? So people, I call it microwavable mediumship. It's almost like you want to buy, the abilities or things like this, and that's not how it works. There's not shortcuts. Even if you're naturally really, really, really open with this, from as a child, you still have to learn how to, like I said before, controlling it and disciplining it, which doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, we have another question from Paul. Paul, go ahead, and then after that, Sister Zan.
Hi, Stephen. Nice seeing you.
Yes,
This
nice to see you
is
too.
Paul.
I haven't seen you in
This is Paul.
centuries, Paul.
You as a medium, do you invoke particular?
Do I invoke particular spirits as a medium? That's your question, right?
Yeah, Paul, you accidentally
Can you invoke a certain particular spirit, like for example, my father?
Uh,
Do you practice that?
well, okay. With mediumship, what I've always said is they call us up, we can't really call them up. So let's say you go to a session with a medium or a meeting, that's been planned out by the spirit world. And really, they're the ones who decide that they're going to come through. Because like, let's say your father doesn't want to communicate. You can't make him communicate. Maybe he's not ready to communicate, or maybe he's, occupied, busy doing other things, so he's not able to. However, I mean, in my experience, like, let's say I was working with you and you asked for your father, well, he might come through. It kind of depends, but the medium is not in control of that, you see? Do you understand? It's the spirits that are in control of that.
Yes.
So you can definitely ask, but what I always pray is I always pray to God, I ask just for, for the highest, to help the person and everything. I let the spirit set the agenda, as opposed to trying to dictate to the spirit, I want to hear from this person, I want to hear from that. So that's how I go about doing things with that.
In your own study, is it good or bad to invoke a spirit?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I mean, you could ask, but if they're not able to come through, they maybe, or they don't want to come through. Like, I could call you on the phone. You don't have to answer it. I might really be a pest. Every moment I'm calling you, you want to just, block me or something because I'm bothering you so much. So it's one of these things where there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's human to want to, let's say you want to hear from your dad or your mom or someone in the spirit world. That's a good thing, but you can't really control that, you see. Usually that's something which is set up by the higher spirit. So sometimes, often with a session, the people who are coming through, I mean, they may be someone who maybe they're related to your wife, your father-in-law comes through, or your brother-in-law, or someone who was your neighbor, from many years ago, or someone you worked with 30 years ago, and they come through, and you don't even know them that well. But you see, there's usually some type of higher purpose for that, that's helping you, or that's somehow helping the other person who's coming in from spirit.
In your own study, is it the naked eye that see the spirit, or the spirit uses the fairy spirit for us to be able to see it?
Well, it depends. With physical mediumship, if they materialize, it's physically there. There's a materialized spirit, and you can see with your physical eyes, and you can touch. You can make a video of it. With mental mediumship, you're seeing it with your you're utilizing your psychic type of the clairvoyance to be able to discern the spirits. So there's two ways that can work. All right. Now, remember, that's the experience of the medium. One way, which is probably the most common, is telepathically, mentally, they impress like a visual image in the mind of the medium. So let's say your father looks a certain way. If I were working with you, I would, in my mind, see your father, what he looked like. Like, maybe he's dressed a certain way. He's wearing a uniform and he looks this way, or maybe he is missing some of his fingers. I'll see, oh my gosh, he's missing one of his fingers, this type of thing, see? So that's impression. Now, the other way, clairvoyantly, which is a bit different, is you can actually be seen more with your subtle vision of your subtle body, your perispirit, right? You're able to actually perceive, the spirits that way. That's less common. Most mediums, when they work, if the information's being impressed in their mind.
Not by the naked eye.
Yeah, not by the naked eye, but well, with the other mediumship, I should say, when I was talking about when you're using your subtle body, right, your perispirit, to be able to see, and that's rare. You're not seeing it with your physical eyes. You're seeing it with your spirit body's eye, the eyes of your spirit body. But it will when you experience it, it will seem like you're seeing it physically. Mm-hmm. And this is rare, but the medium might look and they see the spirit, and the spirit looks as though they're just as solid as someone physically there. It's very different from the other type of clairvoyance that I just described, but the only person experiencing it will be the medium. You understand? It's still mental. That's different. Both of those are different from the materialization that I was talking about, which is physical mediumship, which is completely different, which is based on the chemistry.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Sister
Thank you.
Sand, you have a question, Sister Sanaida? Go ahead. Hello, Sister Sand? There she is.
Good evening, everybody. I just asked something like trance. Kasi as for myself, I didn't experience it. As a medium, I only experience by intuition. Dumadating sa mind ko, not like others na by intuition. I just want to clarify deeply
About trance.
about
Oh.
trance.
Okay, so
Sister Zan is also a medium. Yeah.
so you want to ask about trance? Well, trance is like altered states of consciousness, and actually, with all mediumship, involves altered states of consciousness. Like you can be fully eyes open, conscious of everything, but if you measure the brain waves of the medium will be in an altered state of consciousness, and so altered states of consciousness can be all these different levels of it in varying degrees to very, very, very deep where the medium is totally unconscious. Now, what happens with mediumship is you have two things. You have altered states, and then you have levels of control or influence. These are separate, but they go along together. So when they communicate through a medium, the medium can be at varying levels of altered state. They can be influenced by the spirits. But also, there's different levels of control. And that control can be very, 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 very light or spirit influence, or it can be very, very strong. And when control takes place, they're affecting the mind of the medium, but they're also connecting with the central nervous system of the medium. And when you can control the central nervous system of the medium, physiologically, all the different systems of the body can be controlled, right? The breathing of the medium, the heart rate, and you can put the medium in this very, very, very deep altered state. And what you do, when you talk about the altered state, the mind of the medium dissociates from the physical body in varying degrees. Now, there's different ways of classifying. I would use the word entrancement to describe the control. Trance doesn't necessarily have to involve spirits coming through. You can get something very, very, very deep, and actually doesn't even have to involve mediumship. You can hypnotize someone, get them very, very, very deep in an altered state. There's no spirits involved whatsoever. But the medium, when the spirits are working, like I say, they might be really conscious of what's coming through and even involved in it to some extent, or they can just be completely out of the way. But there's a lot of different degrees of the level of influence and control, along with the levels of trance that can take place with that. One way of doing it would be really thinking of it in terms of percentages, right? So if you think of, let's say a medium is the spirits are working through, and you're hearing the medium speaking, and they're saying, well, I'm Archangel Raphael, and I'm coming through. Now, it might be only 15% is coming in from Raphael. The other 85% is the medium's mind that's involved with this. You see, it's like almost like putting two people together, like blending them together, right? The mind of the spirit or spirits and the mind of the medium. And people don't always realize this. There's some mediums, for example, with trance, they'll talk about one completely unconscious, not aware of anything that's going on. It's all just this other spirit. And that's usually not what's happening. I mean, that's like the medium will exaggerate things, that they want to look like they're really special. And really, a lot of it's the medium. Actually, even when the medium's unconscious, they still have to work through the mind of the medium. So there can still be like filtered through the medium's mind. You know, it's not necessarily completely pure or just the spirit. And that's just the way things are. But in most cases, it's like a composite of two people. And the more the medium can get out of the way, it'll be 85% of the spirit, maybe only 15% of the medium. Does that make sense? And people don't realize this. You see, they'll see a medium, oh, they're channeling this one spirit. And most of it's the medium. But also, you know, keep in mind, when you receive information from the spirit world, oftentimes, let's say you're not really working so much where they're controlling you to the same extent. The medium interprets things, the medium expresses things a certain way. And that's why the medium's helpers have to spend a lot of time blending with that medium, going into that medium's mind and understanding how to work with their particular instrument to get across certain types of information. And with mental mediumship, we're talking about like clairvoyance, for example, so much of it has to do with the frame of reference of the medium, right? That they'll come through certain types of information. Well, like in my life, I have certain things, I'm educated certain ways, certain life experiences. All of that's there on an unconscious level. The spirits can draw upon that as part of the communications, which would be very different from someone else. It can be very hard for the spirits to communicate things because often the information has to be conveyed in a roundabout type of way. You know, sometimes they'll use a lot of symbology, for example, when it comes to clairvoyance. And that's really, really, really difficult. It's interesting. I remember one time, Abner, your brother, was in a workshop I was doing in Northern California, in the Bay Area. This is going back over 10 years ago. I remember this. And your brother was paired up with this woman. And I was having them giving readings for each other, you know, bringing through the spirits. And the woman saw a lion with your brother.
You're not talking about my brother June, isn't it?
Your brother June, yes. But the woman saw a lion. And you know what lion, the word for lion in Spanish is?
No. Oh, no.
Leon?
De Leon.
Oh, whoa.
You see? So this is how they have to communicate with things. But see, that's like that was you understand?
Symbolic.
Yes, this is how they communicate with things like this. So there's it's not always so easy where the medium can hear the name De Leon, you know, but they show the image of the lion and the medium. Now, this is someone who was, you know, very new, you know, inexperienced, learning how to do this. So they show this image of a lion and they could interpret, oh, you know, there's someone here with the name Lion, you know, and so many, we can see it's very challenging. And what happens is someone lacks the training or they lack the experience or they're just not being careful. They can say things and be totally off. It's really hard with the communication, and things have to be said in a roundabout way often. So with clairvoyance, you know, one picture is worth 1,000 words. For example, let's say you had a medium connects to the spirit world and they're shown a red rose. Now, what would a red rose mean to all of you? You know, in a symbolic sense. And some of you might say, oh, it means romantic love, or
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty common in our culture. You know, in the Philippines, Valentine's Day, right? Red
Yes.
roses for your mother or for your wife or this type of thing. Now, I remember I was talking about that at one workshop once years ago, and someone says, well, whenever I see red roses, I think of death because they put red roses on the coffin. So it can mean that too. And there's a lot of different meanings potentially. And it really depends a lot on the medium. But even with one image, it could mean different things. I mean, for example, let's say I was working with someone and I saw a red rose. Well, it might mean because the person is expressing love, but then perhaps it's a woman in the spirit world and her name was Rose. She loved roses.
If
She
you're
grew
really-
roses everywhere. She passed in June when the roses bloomed, and they put roses on the cup. And now when you look at the rose, you have all the thorns, right? And then you have the beautiful flower. Perhaps in this woman's life, she went through all this hardship and pain, you know, just struggle in her own life. And then at the end, there's this beautiful, you know, flower or completion of things. And perhaps the recipient of the message is going through a similar type of challenge in his or her life, you see?
So in
So-
that particular case, Stephen, I'm sorry to interrupt. I
Uh-huh.
just don't want my thought to pass by. If you're a medium, for example, and you've experienced that, and you're not really sure what that rose, for example, really means, how are you to convey this to the audience or to
Well,
your?
that's what the learning, that's what happens with the training and the learning, you see? So June, when you're working, for example, you know, you're training, but also your guides are training. You have a team, they call it like the spirit band or the spirit team, and they're training in how to connect with you and efficiently work through you, which again is, it doesn't just happen overnight. So they have to learn, go into your mind, you know, your mentality, and they'll show you things that mean a certain thing only to you. It's like you develop, it's like a type of, with symbology, it's like a type of psychic shorthand, but you develop a particular vocabulary with it, you see, that's unique for you. I remember when I was inexperienced as a medium, you know, as a student one time, and I just remember a couple hours I spent, it must have been like 400 or 500 different symbols. I wrote them all down, like, and what the meaning was. You know, and this is just when I was just starting out, you see, and they start out with very basic types of symbols and what they mean. So as a medium, there's always also with any images that are presented, there's a feeling that goes along with it too. It's clairvoyant, but there's clairsentience with it too, right? The feeling, or even sometimes claircognizance, a knowing. So you might, you know, see the rose and you'll get a sense, okay, that's a woman's name. Her name was Rosa. This type of thing. And so that they and oftentimes, again, with an image, there can be multi-layers to the both literal as well as symbolic with the particular image that comes through. Now, I live right now in Massachusetts. I live in the town of Greenfield, Massachusetts. I'm about 2 hours west of Boston. And if I wanted to communicate, let's say the word Greenfield, what would I just have to show people? Fields, you know, green grass, green fields, you see? And that would actually be the name of the place. And that's really, so oftentimes, you know, they have to present things again, you know, they visually. And so part of the medium's training is learning how to put those things into words and correctly translate it. Now, someone who's less experienced might not be able to do that so well. And if they start getting their mind involved, it can veer off from really what the spirits are trying to present to them, you see, which is why you have the error.
Yeah.
And also some spirits are better at communicating than others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some when we think of it, it's mental communication. So for example, let's just say your grandmother's in the spirit world. She really likes me. And she comes through me, you know, it's real, because we're like, if she met me, we'd connect, we're harmonious, same wavelength. But then maybe another me, maybe she's going to come through you, June, you know, and she just doesn't like you, you know, just wouldn't get along with you. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't bring her through, but it wouldn't be perhaps as strong as what it could be. Like you expressing her personality might not be what it could be compared to someone she was on the same mental wavelength with. Do you understand? And it's, you know, law of attraction, law of vibration, right? Being on the same mental affinity as someone else.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is dependent. There has to be the harmony. Mm-hmm. Every one of us. I mean, we have cell phones. I've got this iPhone 8, which I've had. I could take this in the middle of Nevada,
mm-hmm.
somewhere in the middle of nowhere. What kind of connection would I get?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I wouldn't get any, or maybe it would just be all, you know, not really strong at all when I was trying to use it. Now, the technology with my phone, nothing wrong with it. Mediumship's the same way. If you don't have the right conditions, you're not going to get the best, you're not going to get favorable results from it when it takes place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's important to have practice, training, understanding.
Yeah, there has to be love, and there has to also be enthusiasm. If people are really excited and like a higher purpose for, not just because, oh, I want to be entertained. You know, people want, you get the, I don't think in the Philippines so much, but in the States or Europe or place, you get people that the mentality sometimes is just, it's very super, it can be very superficial, which is, it's all of this is on a much very deep type of level if you get into it the right way. It's to help us grow as individuals and get closer to God.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I believe Brother Abraham has a question also. Brother Abraham, you were raising your hand a while ago. Hello? Let's see, nandiyan ka pa, Bro Abraham? Okay. Do you have a question, Paul? Si ano
yes.
muna, si Abraham. Go ahead. Abraham, go ahead.
Nako-confuse kasi ako doon sa mga practice na sinasabi ng Brother Stephen. I just want to clarify, Brother Stephen, about the practices. Here in the Philippines, I witness a lot of practices here. We are not already allowed to entertain any disease or pass away to communicate. We are not allowed here. What we are practicing here is about the doctrines of Jesus Christ. And when I heard you earlier, you said there's a trumpet or anything, but here in the Philippines, sometimes you recognize that in other center, but there's a lot of center here are not practicing already that kind of materials. What we are doing here and practicing here is to study the doctrine of Jesus Christ. That's all. Nothing else. Thank you.
Yeah, well, what's most important is studying the higher philosophy, and after you study it, trying to apply it in your life. Like, that's the whole idea. It's with all of mediumship, it's really to elevate people, help people to get closer to God. Communication is good because it can prove to someone the reality of life after death. That's really good. And then also, if someone's having problems, you know, the higher guidance can really help people on a practical level. But ultimately, what's most important is our soul growth, so to speak. And sometimes people can get sort of focused in on the phenomena and almost like,
sorry, I think
I think I just got
Sino yung
muted for a
may
moment.
background na aso? I'm sorry. Pwedeng paki-mute. Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, but the most important thing is growing on a soul level. That's the whole idea behind this. So there's mediumship is all very, very, very good, but what should be our priority should be developing love of God and developing ourselves as individuals. That's what's the most important thing. But mediumship and the spiritual gifts, they're really gifts to be able to share and to be able to help other people with. That's really the higher purpose of it all. Because again, going back, you know, someone can study theology, they can study philosophy, and still intellectually have doubts about this. Even though they might be clergy in whatever the religion is. That's what's very good about this. It's not just the philosophy part, it's actually working with the power of the Spirit and demonstrating the power of, and this is what Jesus did, right? The Master Jesus, when he worked, he actually demonstrated all these different phases of mediumship, not to entertain people, but to awaken people. Because someone who's a doubting Thomas, someone who's uneducated, or they're just very materialistic, they're not necessarily, when they actually experience something directly this way, it makes them actually realize, and hopefully it will direct them toward the higher teachings, which is really the higher purpose of all of this.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if that really answered your question, but
Abraham?
I just referring earlier in my question, how does it takes you, how does it takes long you to recognize yourself as a medium? Because as I witness in our center, it takes a long time. Because it is dependent on the faculty of the medium. Some practices, they only sit once or thrice. They called him a medium. But here in our center, we are properly teach about the gesture, about the expand of time. You recognize you as a medium, but it is not easy to recognize you as a medium when you only sit once or many times. It takes a long time.
Well, mediumship
it takes
development takes a real long, it should take a long time, because even if you're, I mean, sometimes, because I teach, I might have someone come to a class, the first time, and I mean, the spirits might just entrance the person, or the person's very open. They can see the spirits everywhere, right? They're very open, and there's no training, but they're just naturally very open. They don't know what they're doing. They're not really ready to work with other people, you see? And that's why the training is really, really, really important. If someone's going to work with mediumship, they need to be qualified. There has to be some type of an educational level, like standards of proficiency in terms of this. And also, if you're working with other people, you want to have training, in terms of ethics and understanding how to connect with people and relate with people, in a professional type of capacity, which is different than just the having mediumistic abilities or being skilled with this. It's you're working with different people and knowing how to work with them on a professional type of level is very, very, very important.
Okay. Brother Paul, you have a question?
Yeah, I agree with this, Stephen. There are different kinds of level of mediums and the level of understanding about mediums. And there are very often and early in the stage of life being a medium. And the purpose is to elevate the level of the spirit and morally and spiritually. And I can see nothing wrong about what Stephen is practicing. There are different kind of level of understanding which suited for us to level up our spiritual understanding. That's all.
Well, in the Philippines, what I observed is a lot of the mediumship was more of an emphasis on the teachers coming through from the spirit world, which is really, 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 really good, because that's on a high level, if the teachers are high. Because again, you could have someone come through and they're just really ignorant, and so their ego, and they're not really a high teacher, and then people will still blindly follow, and so that's not good. But the spiritual philosophy is the most important thing, and you do have that. However, now in the States or in Europe, you do have the higher teachers coming through. You do have that type of work, but you also have allowing the guides to bring through people's loved ones as well to help them. And there's also a pretty big emphasis on like proving survival, or proving that life continues by bringing through that type of information. So someone who's very
have something to do
skeptical.
with culture, perhaps, Stephen?
Yeah, it's just different culture. But so someone could be an atheist, or they're just skeptical about this. If they go to the medium will actually prove to they'll bring, let's say they bring through a relative or someone who's passed over, someone who's deceased, it'll totally change that person. So the person will no longer be an atheist, or they'll really have, no more doubt about there being life after death. And that's very important. And of course, you have people, they just have some kind of problem in their life, and they get very good advice from a medium. That's also really important. But ultimately, it is this higher spirituality which needs to be imparted. But it is cultural. It's just different emphasis. Now, the other thing that's different within the Philippines, I remember going to these services at different centers. They're like 4 hours long, 3 hours long, 6 hours long.
Even longer, yeah.
Now, if you go back in the 19th century, in the States, for example, people would go to church all day. You'd be a Baptist or whatever it might be. You go to the church, starts at 10 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon. You're there like 6 hours. Nowadays in the States, if you go to a spiritualist church in the States, usually like 90 minutes, 1 hour and a half.
Mhm.
In the UK, it's usually an hour, typically.
Mhm.
So it's different type of culture. At least in the States, people, they wouldn't want to sit for 5 hours in the church.
Yes.
Just it's not better or worse. It's just different.
Different practices, yeah. Brother Abner, you have a question?
Well, yes, and and I will compliment also, because this is really an excellent information that Stephen is sharing to us, and we really appreciate. There actually some Spiritista now, it depends where you are. We're trying to limit it 2 hours or 1 hour and a half because we recognize that 4 hours is a little bit long, unless anniversary, things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's after 2 hours, so your mind is you're hungry and your mind is somewhere. So, but anyway, my other question is because we always have these names that are coming, for example, Saint Peter's or different kind of saints that are coming to us. How important is that, or are they really the saints that talking to us, or?
Okay. Well, I guess there's a couple different things. I mean, first of all, I think the higher spirits don't really care. Like, they don't name drop. They're not really interested in some really high sounding important name. But I think in Filipino culture, because it comes from this, the whole Roman Catholic influence. So a couple things. I mean, first of all, some people are going to be more receptive to some type of message if it's purported to be from someone who's, St. Paul or whoever. Now, the other thing is with some mediums, my guide is better than all your guides. I've got the highest guide in the world. And it's an ego type of thing for a medium to be able to say, oh, I have this high guide. And it's interesting because you might have some medium who claims to channel their guide as such a high guide, and you listen to the information and it's not really high at all.
Yeah.
Or it's just really inarticulate, like, very poorly communicated, the use of language compared to the supposed real intelligent guide. So just because someone says that they have a particular person in the spirit world doesn't mean that it's necessarily that person. Now, I know in my own experience as a medium, I've had people come through from spirit who are very famous or very prominent when they were here. And usually it's because the person who, the recipient, somehow had some type of connection with them. But the higher spirits, they don't name drop. They don't try to come. They're not concerned about things like that so much. So I would always be, I wouldn't necessarily disbelieve, but I would be suspicious. I wouldn't just believe it if someone says someone's very famous without there being some type of proof to it. Does that make sense? Now I know this one medium, he's now in the spirit world, but and this was in New York, but he was this Canadian medium at this one spiritualist community. And he went to this one man once, this took place years ago, and he brought through a man from the spirit world. And the gentleman who he went to recognized the spirit coming through. The spirit coming through was Albert Einstein. And when this gentleman, back in the 1940s, Albert Einstein used to live in the Buffalo, New York area when he was doing research for the atomic bomb, and they somehow knew each other. They were acquainted. But when Albert Einstein came through, he didn't say, "I'm Albert Einstein." It's just very, very mundane types of things about him that this person who knew him, who's acquainted with him or friends with him, would have been able to identify, you see. So if someone talks about their channeling all these really high spirits with all these really important names, that doesn't mean that they're fake. It doesn't mean that they're even deluded necessarily. It might be really true, but you shouldn't just believe it because someone says something like that or claims something like that. And another medium I knew, this elderly medium, she's passed over, and she was in Las Vegas, Nevada. Abner, you've been to Las Vegas before. You've been there, haven't you? It's like all gambling, it's like casinos and all this entertainers,
Of course.
So she was in Las Vegas. This is like years ago. She's this one elderly medium. And she had this man, she was doing reading, she was working with people, and she had this one man come to her, and she brought through the spirit, and she found herself stammering with her words, right? She was stammering with all the words. And now, when she did this, the man, the recipient she was working with, he looked just totally shocked. The person coming through from the spirit world was Elvis Presley. The man she was reading for, she didn't know this, had been Elvis's manager, you see? And Elvis came through. So he's not in Manila working in some Jolie's place. He's in the spirit world. He's really passed over. But he's not going to come through and say, "I'm Elvis Presley." You understand? It's what she was describing. But she literally, her whole intonation of her voice changed, and the stammering when he was speaking through her completely changed.
Matter of taking the information.
Yeah. So those are the things you have to look for. But just because someone says, "Oh, I've got, whoever it might be, got Napoleon coming through, or Queen Elizabeth." Well, maybe.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, and people claim a lot of these types of things, and it's but then sometimes I think too, the spirits will use those types of names because it's going to make the people be receptive to it in a way that they might not be receptive.
Wouldn't that be false pretense, Stephen, on the part of the spirit?
Well, I think so. I think it's to it. You got to also look at it this way. For example, let's say you have the president of the Philippines. Well, the president of the Philippines has ambassadors. They have representatives who represent the government of the Philippines and represent the president. And maybe there's some situation diplomatically, they send like an envoy or they send an ambassador to another country, and that person represents them. Similarly with like Jesus, if you think, the teachings of Christianity, Jesus has all these followers or people who are kind of subservient, to those teachings. And in one sense, you could say someone who represents Jesus is as good as Jesus, to the extent that they're peer, to the extent that they're actually representing officially those teachings. You see? So I think there's some of that too. For example, sometimes when I'm working, I'm shown like, Jesus the teacher. Now, I don't feel I'm directly bringing Jesus through, but I'm aware people in the spirit world who follow those teachings, who live by those teachings, who are trying to reach people here in this world by those teachings, might be working through or helping or influencing the particular person who's the recipient of the medium of the mediumship work that I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's
Like
very, very
representatives.
informative. Yes.
Well, we don't have time anymore, but let's give way to Dinwell for one last question, Dinwell, and then you could probably do the closing prayer as well after Stephen answers your question. Go ahead, Dinwell.
Maybe a little bit of Abraham, since just a little bit of Abraham and Dinwell. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Brother Stephen. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I would like to ask this one. I would like to ask if does astral travel really exist? Well, I observed and witnessed this one. And this pertains to a practice of some spiritist center where a group of mediums gather around and receive their spirit guardian. Then after that, they would start claiming to see things and places. They would also start hearing voices as well. Well, their intention of doing astral travel is to gather medicine for illnesses and assess the weather. Brother Stephen, rather,
Yes.
from your understanding, does this really exist, or is this some sort of effect from low-level spirit to employ fantasy and entertainment to defraud the listener?
Well, there's a few. It could be both. It could be either of those to answer your question. Okay, so I have one group right now. I'm teaching on Zoom. I teach courses on Zoom for mediumship, and I have a out-of-body travel made easy course on Monday nights. I just started it last week. 6 weeks, and people, and it teaches how to travel out of your body, right? Unconsciously and consciously. So you can project your subtle body, right? Your perispirit out of your physical body, and you can go places. And so that's genuine, and you can actually, with that, in theory, you could use it for purposes like what you're talking about, in terms of, you're talking about like for medicines or for seeing what the weather is going to be, things like that. So so to answer your question, yes, you can have that, but you can also have people who are deluded or who are going about things in a very superficial level. So if it seems like it's that way, that's probably the mentality of the people at this particular center. I don't know. I'd have to see for myself, but I would trust how you feel about it. But you can actually travel out of your body, and out of body or astral projection a lot of times goes hand in hand with what people experience when they're developing. They might start to have a lot of out of body experiences. So, for example, someone has a near-death experience, it usually opens them up psychically. They come back into their body at the end of and they're very, very, very clairvoyant, or they're very open to the spirit world in a way. And that's also one thing that the higher spirits will do, is they'll have people that they will affect people. So people do have out of body experiences, because when someone has one on a conscious type of level, it really kind of awakens the person. It makes someone realize, my gosh, I'm not my body. Can you imagine if you floated out of your body and you look down and you see your physical body, and you feel yourself in your spirit body? It's really it's, as an experience, it really opens people up and makes people think differently. It transforms people, which is a very good thing. And I'm really into the whole astral travel type of thing myself.
So thank you,
sure.
Mr. Yes,
But I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Stephen. But so it is possible that astral travel do exist, but
Yes.
would like to add, is this a dangerous practice, or?
Well, it's not really dangerous any more than any type of mediumship is. I mean, people on an unconscious level, people astral travel all the time when they're asleep. It's very common. Do any of you sleepwalk? Maybe some of you have sleepwalked, or and you can have someone who does this. It's very common for people they go out of their body while they're asleep, and you might have this very vivid dream of yourself flying, or maybe you're in the you're talking to deceased loved ones, this type of thing, because the astral plane, the spirit world, is all around us. Now, it's not dangerous, but when someone does go out of their body, especially on like a conscious type of level, it's frightening for someone. It's really scary. The first thing someone's going to think, oh my God, I'm dead. I want to get back into my body. And then they'll go right back in. And also people have these ideas that, oh my God, I'm going to go out of my body, and this evil spirit's going to take over my body while I'm gone. That's not going to happen. That's not how it works and everything. I mean, you're in your body, you're connected to your body, right? It's called like the silver cord. It's an energetic, almost like umbilical type of cord that connects. And when that cord is severed, that's when physical death takes place. But you're still, connected to your body. It's not like anyone can take it over or you're going to have any kind of problem with that. It's just scary for people psychologically because they're not used to it. We're so used to being in the physical bodies. That's basically why people react that way.
Last one, Brother Stephen. Sorry.
It's okay.
Can I force myself to astral travel?
Well, you can't force yourself unless you go sit in the middle of the road and then a truck hits you. Then you won't be, then you'll be dead. But there's techniques you can learn. You can study this and everything. And in my second book, I have a whole chapter on out-of-body travel in this book, in relation to mediumship. And there's many, many, many books that have been written online too. I think you could, or on YouTube, you could probably find a lot of different books and that talk about different techniques and different approaches, and different techniques work for different people. So you want to experiment and kind of see what works for you, but it's very safe. You might want to say prayers and also ask your guides to help you with this as well. And they most likely will do it while you're more in an unconscious state, because the analytical mind gets in the way. The other thing that happens is we have natural defense mechanisms. So to prevent, it's really just we naturally react to anything, to physical death. So the subtle body, astral body, is supposed to be within the physical body. So once you start going out of it, it's normal for the body to react and to tense up, this type of thing, and to get in the way, which will prevent that type of phenomena from happening.
Thank you, Brother Stephen.
Okay. Okay. So, Brother Abraham, you still have a question before we close? I see your hand, raising your hand a while ago.
Wala na po. Okay na po.
Can you do us the honor of giving the closing prayer? But before that,
You're muted,
On
Attorney.
mute, Kuya Jun.
Jun, you're muted, Brother Jun.
oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, Stephen, thank you very much for sharing this very informative information to us tonight, and we really learned a lot about mediumship. Very sensible and very eye-opener about mediumship, and hopefully we could have more of this session in the coming days. We could probably set some dates to talk about specific things.
Yeah, no, it's really nice to be here. I wish we were all hanging out together.
Yeah.
Then we could all have dinner together, or breakfast or something.
Yeah, when are you going to California? We could all hang out.
Oh gosh. Well, I was living in California for 4 years too. I was in the Bay Area for a while. Yeah. And then I moved here. The last 2 years I've been back in Massachusetts. But I mean, I'm like all over the place and, everywhere.
Yeah, let us know when you have.
I've got kids in New Zealand. So yeah, I mean, it used to be when I was living in New Zealand, I would go through and I would stay a week, and just have work set up in different places in California. And, this is going back because anyway, go back 10, 15 years ago, but.
Well, when you go back to California, I'm retired now, so we maybe, we can get together again. And
oh, that would be great. We should definitely hang
that,
out sometime,
Yeah. It's so interesting that you mentioned a while ago that many in the States, including me, you go to a 2-day session or 3-day session, we want to be an expert.
Well, they want to be it's really bad. It's like the whole mentality. It should be about quality and substance. It's not this whole superficial. You can't buy enlightenment. It's a lot of work.
Yes. What a excellent information. And I know it was a short message and you come through to us. What a blessing, really.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm a little tired because I had a group I was working with last night till late, and then I've been staying up late the last couple of weeks, so I've been sort of 7 o'clock is early for me.
4 o'clock is earlier, Stephen.
Oh, I know. I don't even want to think about it.
All right.
From
Again,
the-
thank you very
yes.
much.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Stephen.
night, everyone. Brother Paul, can you do us the honor of for the closing prayer, please?
All right. Let's pray. Thank you, oh God, for all the blessings you have given us for today, for enlightening us, and for this study, for the whole group. Thank you for Stephen for giving us enlightenment about mediumship. And we were asking you for all your blessings, for continued support, for enlightenment. We are asking all through this through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Good
Amen.
evening, everyone.
Brother Stephen.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank
Good
you
evening,
so much.
everyone.
We from the bottom of our heart.
Thank you. Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Stephen. Thank you,
Yeah, God
everyone.
bless you all.
God bless.
You can sleep now, Stephen.
Well, I've got people I've got to work with in the next 2 hours. Anyway.
Yeah, good night.
June, you can practice your swing now.
Cold.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
So
everyone. Have a
much.
nice evening.